Hey guys, so because I'm away today, I'm going to do this through a video. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you've got your red booklets and your yellow booklets ready to go with your Wilfred Owen poems in them. And the poem you're going to be looking at today is The Next War, so everyone needs to turn to that poem. Alright, before you start, there's a few things that you need to know about the poem's context. So he wrote the poem in September of 1917. As most of you know, he was in hospital with shell shock. He sent the poem to his mum in a letter in that same month, so in September, as a warning to his brother Colin, who was turning 17 that year. Now, as most of you know, conscription was a big thing during World War One, and Wilfred didn't want his little brother Colin going to war thinking that it was all glory and bravery and fun. So he wanted to show Colin the horrors of war. And the final line, when you come to read the poem, will show you again that idea that patriotism is not a reason to go to war. Okay, so he's basically trying to protect his little brother and say this is not where you want to be on the front. So in his letter, next dot point, in his letter he said to his mum, I include my next war in order to strike a note. I want Colin to read, mark, learn, etc. from it. So what exactly did Wilfred want Colin to learn? So as I said to you before, don't look on war as something glorious. All right, and that's an answer that you guys can put on your sheets later on. Final dot point is that he wrote the poem after his friendship developed with Siegfried Sassoon. Okay, we've come across him before when we did Dolce et Decorum Est. They met in hospital. Siegfried was an artist and a poet, and he did a lot of writing, and you can actually look his poems up. While Owen was in hospital for shell shock, Siegfried had been admitted due to sort of being unsound of mind. Basically, Siegfried was of the idea that war was a terrible lie, that it shouldn't happen. And he was telling everybody about it. So they didn't know what to do. They couldn't arrest him. They couldn't sort of send him back out because he was refusing to go. And he was refusing to go on the grounds of mental instability, and so he ended up in this hospital. So this was the kind of guy that Owen was getting to know, really outspoken, really anti-war, and that's where a lot of Owens's ideas sort of came from, and Siegfried sort of encouraged him to write his poetry. All right, so what I'm going to do first, instead of me reading it out to you, we're going to have a listen to Alex Jennings. Some of you might know him. He's an English actor. So just listen and read along as he speaks.
The Next War. Out there we've walked quite friendly up to death, sat down and eaten with him, cool and bland, pardoned his spilling mess tins in our hand. We've sniffed the green thick odour of his breath. Our eyes wept, but our courage didn't ride. He spat at us with bullets and he's coughed shrapnel. We chorused when he sang aloft. We whistled while he shaved us with his scythe. Oh, death was never enemy of ours. We laughed at him. We leagued with him, old chum. No soldiers paid to kick against his powers. We laughed, knowing that better men would come, and greater wars, when each proud fighter brags he wars on death for life, not men for flags.
Okay, so as you see, there's some differences between what he reads and between what we've got. So over here is the actual poem that you guys are using for the HSC. Few little differences, like we say lives, he says life. But what I really want you to do now is, as you were reading along, I'm hoping that you're sort of taking in what Owen is trying to say. So let's have a little look at. So here's the actual poem. Now I have annotated it myself. You guys can write the same sort of things down. I'm just going to read through it, and instead of what we normally do, me reading and asking you questions, I'm just going to sort of talk you through bits and pieces, and you can annotate it as you go. So it's called The Next War. The first thing we're going to look at is the title, all right? So the idea of next, it's almost prophetic, all right? He's looking forward, making a prophecy that there will be another war. Owen knows human nature, and he knows or at least he hopes there won't be, but he knows that there probably will. So this is a bit of a message to the next soldiers like Colin and like the soldiers that we have today and those that fought in World War II. All right, now it starts here with this little epigraph, which is an opening that comes from someone else. And in this case, it comes from his mate, Siegfried Sassoon. And it says, "War's a joke for me and you, while we know such dreams are true." All right, so here I've written there's a bit of an irony. Okay, so we get this idea of a joke that, you know, people might think war's something fun we go into to be brave, to be honourable. But we know that such dreams are true. So dreams that he and Owen shared. And all the way through Owen's poetry, we get that sort of imagery of dreams, of haunting. All right, remember from Dolcet to Coromest and the gas attacks? So this is irony. He's using humour to show that really dreams and nightmares can come true. So let's start the actual poem. Now it's in a sonnet form again. So remember what sonnets were used for. We talked about this when we did Anthem for Doomed Youth, so you can go back and have a look on your notes. And I actually want you to do that. So one of the things that you're going to do for that sheet is to tell me what the point of a sonnet is. All right, so out there, he's set the scene already, all right? He's moved his audience out there, and he's moved himself out there into this area that really no one can know unless they are there. We've walked quite friendly up to death, all right? So straight away we have personification. Death is well known to these guys. He's capitalized, right? So death is important because we know, obviously, it was World War I and death was everywhere. Sat down and eaten with him, cool and bland, pardoned his spilling mess tins in our hands. All right, so we've sat down, we've eaten with him. They're very familiar with death. All right, he's almost like a friend to them at this point. It's very familiar action that he's using. It's almost as if death is a comrade of his. Our eyes wept, but our courage didn't writhe. All right, we were sad, but we were courageous in the face of death. He spat at us with bullets and he coughed shrapnel. We chorused when he sang aloft. We whistled while he shaved us with his scythe. Okay, so he spat, bullets, coughed, shrapnel. It's almost onomatopoeia again, like you got with the rapid rifles rattle in the last poem. This time he's doing it with death and the sound of guns again. So you see all these techniques and themes that run throughout all of his poems. He spat at us with bullets and he's coughed, so they're all personified again. Death rules this war. We chorused when he sung aloft. We whistled while he shaved us with his scythe. So there's a bit of juxtaposition going on there, okay? These men, they're the ones that are bringing death, all right? It's their jobs to bring him to the war, to the front, and to try and kill those on the other side. So when he sang aloft, when death was singing above us, we whistled, we chorused to send him on his way. But then there's the other side, that he shaved us with his scythe. They're aware that quite often death is the one coming for them as well, which kind of makes him this really scary figure. But Owen has chosen to take a tone of almost jovial, looking on the positive side of it, that death works for them as well. Oh, death was never an enemy of ours. Exclaiming it to the world, death was not our enemy. It kind of makes me wonder who was, and you guys should be able to answer that, who the enemy actually was for Owen. And it wasn't just the Germans. We laughed at him, we leagued with him, old chum. Right, so this kind of language, old friend, old chum. No soldiers paid to kick against his powers. Basically, no soldier gets paid in order to kick against his powers or to say, I'm not going to bring death into this. Soldiers are paid to kill. All right, so death had to become something that they became accustomed to. He became like an old chum or an old friend. We laughed, knowing that better men would come, and greater wars when each proud fighter brags. He wars on death. For lives, not men, for flags. All right, so we laughed knowing that better men would come. And here's that prophecy that ties back up to the title. And we knew another war would come. Greater wars. When each proud fighter brags, he wars on death. So the fighters are there saying, I'm staying alive, I'm fighting for life. This is what Owen wants to see, that if there are going to be wars, people are fighting for life, not necessarily always for flags. Alright, so patriotism, bravery, all those ideas that we've seen through propaganda in his other poems, although propaganda is not hugely brought out in this one, there's a common link between what Owen sees war as being. What I do when I'm annotating, I go through and I highlight my techniques, and I highlight what effect they have. So remember, if you're ever talking about a technique, so I've got here, for instance, irony is used to show that war is not taken seriously and nightmares can come true. All right, that's my little note to myself because that's what I think it means. So I've got my technique and then I've got the effect of the technique. And what I do is I go through and I highlight. So my techniques are in green here. I've also added some extra stuff, epigraph, because I find that when I go through and highlight that quite often I've left bits out that I could have put down. So what I want you guys to do before you complete that sheet is go back through your annotations, because I know while I've been talking that you've been making annotations. Go back and either underline or highlight different techniques, and then show me that there's a difference between that technique and the effect that it has on an audience. Because it's not enough just to tell me that there's irony or there's an epigraph or there's personification. You have to tell me what they do. Right, what emotional effect does this poetry have on us, and how do the techniques help us to get there? All right, so I think that's it, and you guys have got the sheet to finish. Good luck. Remember, you can rewind this and pause it and whatever else you need to do in order to get your work done. But by next lesson, I'm hoping that you will have it all done.